So now we are going to start our work with equations that have two variables. So our previous work, we were solving linear equations with one variable, and when we would solve, we would isolate the variable and get one answer that worked in the equation. This time, we're going to start now doing some work in which our equations will have two variables, typically x and y. And in particular, we're going to start in this section working with linear equations. So linear equations in two variables have this form. Standard form is ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are numbers. So an example would be 2x plus 3y equals -7. Then that, as you can see, we have an equation in that standard form, and it has the two variables x and y. When we talk about a solution to an equation with two variables, these solutions will be represented as ordered pairs. So we will need a value for x and the value for y that goes with that x. Now, in these equations, and when we're dealing with these two variables, we call x the input variable. X is the input variable in our relationship here because the equation is giving us a relationship between x and y. And x is the input variable. And in our order pair, the x-coordinate, the input variable, will come first in our order pair. Then y is dependent on what x is. So we call y our output variable. It's the value we get when we substitute in a particular x, we get a particular y, and that relationship is defined by the equation that we're given. And so y, or the output variable, will always come as the second coordinate in the order pair. And another way that you can remember it is that they're alphabetical too, x comma y. The order pair does include these parentheses symbols around it, and some of my students in past classes forget to put the parentheses, but it's very important that you do include the parentheses. Now, in this particular video, we're going to take these order pairs. We're going to practice graphing them. Now, when we were doing work in the last chapter with one variable and we had any kind of graph with one variables, we used one single number line, didn't we? But now, since we're going to be talking about order pairs that have both an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate, we are going to graph those points in a rectangular coordinate system that's made up of the intersection of two number lines. The horizontal number line looks just like our number lines that we've been working with in the last chapter, and that horizontal number line is the x-axis, and that's where we will graph our input variables. And then the vertical number line is the y-axis. That's where we have our output variable. And notice that the positive values for the vertical line for the y-axis are in the upper part, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the upper part. And then our negative y values are below the x-axis, -1, -2, -3, and so on. Now, another thing that I want you to notice is that as soon as we had that intersection of those two axes, that split up our rectangular coordinate system here into four regions that are called quadrants. We number the quadrants, and I always tell my students this, and Super Bowl games is maybe the only place where you see Roman numbers used, but it's very traditional that we number the quadrants with Roman numerals. And so quadrant number 1, and that's a Roman numeral 1, this is where we're going to graph all of the order pairs that have a positive x-coordinate and a positive y-coordinate. They're going to be housed in this first upper right-hand quadrant. Now the quadrant's numbering goes counterclockwise. So now we go on to quadrant number 2, Roman numeral 2, and this is where we're going to house all of the points where our x-coordinate is negative but our y-coordinate is positive. Continuing counterclockwise, we arrive at quadrant number 3 in this lower left-hand corner, and this is the quadrant where all the order pairs have a negative x-coordinate and a negative y-coordinate. And finally, the last quadrant here on the lower right-hand corner is the fourth quadrant, Roman numeral 4, and this is where we have ordered pairs with a positive x-coordinate and a negative y-coordinate. So in this video, we're just going to practice plotting ordered pairs and stating which quadrant or which axis they lie in. Okay, and then in the next video, we will talk about how do we graph these linear equations with two variables. Okay, so let's take a look at some ordered pairs. Okay, so here we have 6 ordered pairs that we're going to graph, and there's a rectangular coordinate system here for us. Let's label these axes again. The x-axis, which will be horizontal. The scale, we start with 0 and 1, 2, 3. We're making each of those tick marks be worth 1 unit. And of course, we have our negative numbers on the left. And then the vertical axis, which is our y-axis. And a reminder again that these positive numbers go up the vertical, and then the negatives are below the x-axis. So there is our rectangular coordinate system, and we want to plot each of these points in that system. And we also want to state which quadrant or axis they lie in. So as you look at point number 1, our x-coordinate, and sometimes, especially when you first start working with ordered pairs, you may find it helpful to just label x and y. It's just x comma y like that. Okay, and so our first order pair has an x-coordinate -3 and a y-coordinate 5. And so our x-coordinate is negative and our y-coordinate is positive. So that means negative means it's going to be over here on the left side of the 0 and with the x, but positive means that the y is going to be up. So we're going to end up in quadrant number 2. This is quadrant 2, just to remind you again of the numbering. And the numbering is, this is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Okay, and so this guy's going to end up in quadrant 2. And so how we graph this is we're going to find the x -3 first. So that's right here. Right here is x -3. I'm going to use the highlighter. So right here is x -3. And then we have to go up 5. So we went -3 on the x-axis to the left, and then up 5. We arrived at this point right here, and that's -3, 5. Okay, so notice I went from the 0, 0. By the way, this point right here where the two axes meet, that's called the origin. That's called the origin. The origin is the point where the two axes meet, and it's got coordinates 0, 0. Okay, so from 0, 0, I went to the -3 on the x and up 5 units to 5 on y. And that point that I put there, that's the point for -3, 5. Okay, point number 2 is 4, 6. So we have a positive x and a positive y. A positive x and a positive y means that we're going to be in quadrant number 1, right? So again, we're going to go to the positive 4. So here's 4. On my axis, right? So I'm going to go, let's use a different color. I'm going to go 4, positive 4 on the axis, and then up 6. Up 6, and then I'm going to put an order pair right there on the little crosshairs there. And this guy's going to be 4, 6. That's point number 2. Okay, number 3, we have 0, 8. So x is 0. So that means that we start off right at the origin. And we go up 8. And right there, we put an order pair. And this is 0, 8. And so this particular point is not on in a quadrant. It kind of straddles two, doesn't it? So we say that this point is on the y-axis. So it lies on the y-axis. All right, -7, -1 is our next point. So we have negative x-coordinate, negative y-coordinate. That's going to set us down into quadrant 3. To that lower left-hand corner, right? So we're going to go to -7, 4, 5, 6, 7, -7. So from the 0, go all the way to -7, which is right there. And then we're going to go down 1. -7, down 1. And so we have right here our -7, -1 ordered pair. Okay, so we went 7 units left of the 0 and down 1 for the -1. Quadrant 3. Our next order pair is -9, 0. So x is -9. So we're going to come all the way to -9. Here's -9. And we're going to put a dot right on the x-axis because y is 0. So this lies on the x-axis. And it's this point over here, negative 9 comma 0. Okay? Are you getting the idea here? And then our last point here is 2, negative 8. 2, negative 8. So we have a positive x with a negative y, and a positive x with a negative y is quadrant 4. We're going to go to the 2, and then we're going to go down 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right here. And so right here, right, because this is, let's make sure, negative 7, negative 8, right there we have 2, negative 8 in quadrant 4.